part of business studies that will be essential for you as you're nearing the end of prelim, but also as you're going into HSC business studies. It is something that you will need throughout both of them, and it's how to write a business report. Now, a business report is a very important part of business studies because it's a very unique style writing that you don't get in other subjects. It has a lot of similarities with your science reports and sometimes those that you get in geography, but it is very different from how you would write your essays in either history or English, and it's a very common mistake that people make and that they try to write them exactly like they are. Okay, so today we're going to go through how to write your business reports. Now, just a reminder that I have put up a couple of sample answers up on Google Classroom already. I would advise that you download those before you watch the rest of this video so you can highlight as we're going along our way, and it will make it a lot easier for you. Okay, so let's start. So one of the things that I want to recommend for you here is a certain reading. Okay, this is Decoding HSC Business Studies, and it goes through a whole bunch of past exams and responses from 2012 by 2019. Okay, there's two of these books. The green book, which is the one covered here, goes along multiple choice and short answer sections. The purple one, which is book 2, goes over section 3 and 4 of the Business Studies HSC examination, which is, of course, the business report and extended response sections. Okay, they're very useful books, and a lot of what I'm going to say in this video comes from recommendations from these books, but also from one man in particular, Omar Jamal, who gave an excellent lecture that I went to the other month. Okay, so it's a very good book if you can find it. If you need it, you can come see me in my office and I can give you a copy for you to borrow. So let's see. So what does a business report question look like? Okay, so this was taken from a 2018 preliminary examination. Okay, so for those of you that are watching this that are doing your HSC, you will of course see that the question information is going to be a bit different because it's not obviously using your HSC syllabus, but the structure of it is going to remain pretty much the same. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So you've got section 3, this is where your business report question will always be. Okay, and you're going to have about 30 minutes to do this. Now, they recommend that it's going to take you 30 minutes. Really, you're going to need something like 40 to 50 minutes for this, which means that you have to close up time in your other sections because this is quite an extensive section to do. But we'll talk about that a bit later on how to manage your examinations, okay? So let's have a look at this. Answer the question in a writing booklet. Well, they're going to give you pages, so that makes sense. In your answer, you'll be assessed on how well. This is just seeing how if you meet the outcomes. What we need to do is get straight into this part. Okay, question 20. So your business report is worth 20 marks. Okay, it's the same in prelim as it is in the HSC. And you will see here that you have a scenario or a stimulus. Okay, it is very important for you to read this scenario and stimulus. The amount of people that I see answering this question without actually reading it properly is quite amazing. Okay. Now, every business report will have a stimulus of some kind. Most of the time, they're going to give you this sort of scenario here where they just tell you what's happening. Other times, they're going to give you a picture or a graph, and it's basically you have to interpret what's happening from that graph. Whatever they're giving you, you have to refer to it. Okay, so make sure that you read the scenario properly, that you interpret it properly, and that you're using it later on, which we'll discuss. Okay, so our scenario is 2 sisters have decided to open their own clothing production business in Australia and will focus on Australian-made and sustainable clothing to attract a customer base. They are considering setting up a small factory in an industrial zone in Sydney and plan to employ 12 staff. Their business, Tailored Frame, will produce clothing for both women and men, which is designed by the 2 sisters who will be partners in the business. Okay. Now, the 2 sisters planning to open the Tailored Frame have asked you to write a report which provides them with advice they need to set up their new business. Now, a very important thing to remember with business reports is all the business reports are under the assumptions that you are the experts in these fields and that they're sending you these reports for consultation, meaning they're asking you for advice. Okay, so this is the scenario of the people who are asking you for advice. Here's what they want your advice on. In your report, describe 2 influences in establishing a small to medium enterprise. Explain the management process required for the marketing of the business's products. And recommend an appropriate management approach that the management of Tailored Frame could use in their business. So basically what you have to do in your business report is you have to answer these 3 things. Okay? This is all it's asking you to do, but you have to answer all 3 of them in contrast to this scenario. Okay, and how this scenario works is going to interact with those 3, and it's going to change the answers that you might give for all of those. Okay, so first things first, okay, with business reports, one of the main things that you need to have is titles and subtitles. Okay, so keep in mind that when you're doing a business report, you are expected to separate the different sections by titles and subtitles. These are the different ones that you will need most certainly. Okay, you're going to need the title of the report. So this is literally the one that you put at the very top. And if you want just the simplest title possible, okay, it's just going to be business name. So in this particular case, it's going to be Tailored Frame Report. Done. That's your title. Okay, write that title, then underline it. Okay, the very next title is going to be executive summary, and we're going to go through what all of these mean. Okay, so you need your executive summary. Okay, you put that underneath the title of the report. So the title of the report should be in the center top of the page. Executive summary should be right next to, right underneath it, on the left-hand side of the page. Write down executive summary, underline it, and then you'll write your actual executive summary paragraph, which we'll explain in a little bit. Okay. The next one is going to be the titles addressing which dot point of the question you're addressing. This should be using language from the syllabus. Okay. So after your executive summary, you're going to have 3 other titles that you're going to be talking about in this particular case, because you've got 3 dot points. So each title would be a dot point. Okay. Now, how do you work out what the name of that title is? Well, you're going to be using the language from your syllabus. Okay. So in this particular case, you might call just the first one, okay, describe 2 influences in establishing a small to medium enterprise. Your title might just be influences in establishing a small to medium enterprise, because that's taken and ripped straight from the syllabus. And that's what you're going to be talking about in that section. Okay, but if you don't have the title for that, then you're not going to get the report structure marks. Okay, it's very important that you get the titles. Okay, the last title that you will need is the conclusion/recommendation. Okay, so unlike an essay where you just write all these things in the paragraph, you actually need to title your paragraphs. Now, all of these titles should be underlined to distinguish them. If you don't do them, you lose marks for not following a business report structure. So underline them. Okay, it's very essential. Okay, so common question that I often get in this one is, what language should I use? Okay, whilst writing the business report, you should remember that you're writing for a client and that you're writing for their interests. To that extent, you should write using the language of the syllabus, whilst also ensuring that you're responding to their interests, the client's interests, not just waffling on about your knowledge of the content. This is something that I keep on saying, but you should know the syllabus back to front by the time you get to the examinations, okay? Because if you know that, you can use that language in your responses, okay? And you're not sort of making up words as you're going across. You should also make sure that you're not using any first or second person references. So first being I, me, etc. Second being you, they, them. If you are using those first and second person references, you will lose marks, okay, because you're losing the structure and formality marks. You need to talk in the third person. So instead of saying, I recommend that the business do this, you would say, it is recommended that the business does this. Okay. So, what does a business report question look like? Well, we've seen this one before. Okay. And you can see that we've got our stimulus. We've got a little bit more information on the stimulus, and then we're being told what we have to do. Okay. So what are the possible ways that we could answer this question? Okay, well, let's just move this across. This comes from the actual answer section for this preliminary examination. So for example, in this first dot point, describe 2 influences in establishing a small to medium enterprise. You could have chosen from all these dot points, which you can find in the syllabus, to answer that question. Now, someone might ask, sir, do we need to talk about all of those? Absolutely not. Okay, because if you can see, 2 influences. So you would pick the influences from this list that most closely deal with your scenario. So for example, your scenario is talking about that they want to set up a small factory in an industrial zone in Sydney. Okay. Well, we know that we're going to be talking about zoning, so we might look at this and go, now hold on, here's legal, here's zoning, so I want to be talking about zoning and making sure that I have that legal syllabus terminology in it. Okay? Same with explain the management process required for the marketing of the business's products. Well, I have to be talking about the management processes relating to marketing from the syllabus, which are these 2 things. These are the ones that you would be talking about. Okay? And that last one, recommend an appropriate management approach. Well, here we have 3 management approaches: classical, behavioral, and contingency. Please keep in mind it was recommend an appropriate one, which means that we should be choosing from one of those 3. We do not talk about all 3. Okay, we might mention that there are 3 to show that we have knowledge of the content, but we wouldn't be talking about all 3. And this is what our marking criteria would look like. Okay, so if we can have a look at this very top band, provides detailed characteristics and features of 2 influences in establishing an SME. Okay, so you can see that answers that very first dot point. Clearly provides how and or why management processes are used to market a product, second dot point. Provides reasons in favour of an appropriate management approach the business could use, third dot point. Okay. Now the next 2 are going to be about our structure and our ability to communicate. So makes effective use of the information provided, demonstrating extensive knowledge and understanding relevant to the question. And the 5th dot point, presents a sustained, logical and cohesive business report integrating relevant business terminology and concepts. This one is basically saying I can use the syllabus language correctly and it makes sense. This one is about how well I deal with the scenario. Okay, so let's have a look at our executive summary. Okay, now an executive summary, as you might have figured out, is pretty much the introduction to our business report. Okay, and what it's doing is it's going to be introducing all the different things that we're going to be talking about, and it's also checking that we have knowledge of what our scenario or stimulus is. Now, effectively, when you're doing an executive summary, as Amar Jamal was counselling, okay, and Amar Jamal is a man who has had many years of experience in dealing with business reports for the business studies HSC examination, we should divide it into these 5 different sections, okay, to do our executive summary properly, okay. The first part being our headings plus subheading. So that is literally putting the title and then the subtitle for the actual title and executive summary, okay. The next one is our purpose. Why are we writing this report? Okay. The next one is elaborate on purpose. what specific things do we want to talk about in this report? Those are our 3 dot points. The next one is our example from the stimulus. We want to be making sure that the marker can see that we are nailing this and that we understand what the scenario is asking of us. And the next one, and the last one, is linking it all together. Something that I'm sure you would remember from your peel structures, okay? Basically making sure that we have answered the question. So let's look at the example and see how it's done. So this is what I was saying. You needed that downloaded copy of that tailored frame report. Okay, so I'll give you a chance just to download it now and get it up. I would recommend printing it and highlighting as we're going, but you can also do this digitally if you want as well. So what I'll do is I'll just stop this and I'll share with you the actual report. Okay, so here we are. So let's have a look. We can see here that we have our little legend at the bottom. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be highlighting as we're going through, just so you can see what we're actually talking about, and I'll use different colors. Okay, so first thing that we needed to look at, okay, is we're going to be looking for our headings and subheadings. Now I'm going to color that in yellow. You can use whatever you want. Okay, if you want to do it in hot pink, you do it in hot pink. Now, our headings and subheadings. Does our executive summary have them, and does the beginning of our business report have them? You better betcha. Okay, it definitely has them. Tailored frame report, so that's our title. And then our subtitle here is executive summary. So we're straight on the money here. Okay, you literally call it executive summary. Not too bad, eh? So let's keep on going. Okay, we're now looking for our purpose. This report aims to address the concerns that the potential business, Tailored Frame, is facing with respect to starting up their new business. Does exactly what it says, doesn't it? It gives us the purpose of why we are writing this thing. So we're going to put that in lime green. Okay. Now, I've left a couple of gaps in between so that you can write whatever you want in between that. Okay, so if you want to write down notes as we're going through it, I would strongly recommend that you do. Okay, so now what we're looking for is elaborate on purpose. Okay, now this is going to be a relatively big one. Okay, so don't expect it to be only 1 or 2 sentences, because what we're going to be doing is we are going to be looking at, okay, now we need to go through all the different dot points. So let's see how we've done it. Specifically, this report outlines the difficulties and influences in establishing a new business, focusing on small and medium enterprises, detailing personal qualities like qualifications and skills, whilst also looking at establishment options. Okay, so we've done our first little bit on elaborating on the point. We're going to go hot pink, okay? Now you can see there that we are focusing on our first dot point. And not only have I just regurgitated what the first dot point is and that we're looking at influences on small and medium enterprises, I have told them what influences in particular I'm going to be looking at. You have to do this because your introduction is introducing what specific things you're going to be looking at. So in this particular case, the influences that I'm going to be looking at are personal qualities, like qualifications and skills, whilst also looking at establishment options. Okay, it's very important that you read and know your syllabus. Okay. Additionally, this report will also explain the necessity of creating and maintaining management processes to market the business's goods, such as identification of the target market and marketing mix. My apologies. So once again, I've elaborated on that second dot point, okay, which if you remember was talking about the importance of management processes to marketing. And I've told you which management processes and marketing I'm going to be focusing on. Identification of the target market and marketing mix. I'm being very specific and I'm using that language from the syllabus to really identify it. Finally, it is recommended that Tailored Frame adopt a classical management approach to aid in the establishment phase of its business and manage their potential 12 new factory employees. Okay, so this one's a bit of a double. Okay, first of all, it's definitely elaborating on the purpose, and it's going over that management approaches dot point, that last one. Okay, and I've identified which management approach I'm going to be talking about. It's classical management approach. However, I've also included a little bit of identity information from the stimulus. I'm basically saying I have read the stimulus and I understand what's going on. Okay? You need to be able to do that. If you go through this entire executive summary without once talking about what's in the stimulus, you have made a mistake. Okay? You need to be integrating what's in a stimulus into your response. Okay? By integrating this information and adopting these recommendations, it can be expected that Tailored Frame can successfully start their new business. Okay? We're going to do this in Celeste. Okay? A light blue. So, once again, I have taken all the information that I've gotten. I've focused it back on what the scenario is actually asking me to do. And I've basically said, I'm going to be talking about all these different things. And once again, I've really put the name of the business in there to make sure that we understand what we're all talking about. Okay? Make sure you have these things. An executive summary is generally not too difficult. Okay? Provided that you are following those. Okay? Now, this isn't the most amazing one, but this is a really solid one. Okay? And this little green line at the top, the purpose, you could almost use that line again and again and again, and there's only two things that you'd have to change. Tailored Frame, because that's the name of the business obviously, and starting up the new business. Okay? And you change that to whatever the scenario says their problem is, their overall problem. Okay? And then you can really follow this little structure. Just starting off with specifically this report outlines. Additionally, this report will. Finally, it is, can't use recommended all the time unless that last dot point has recommend in it. Okay, but you can really smash out all of these in the same structure over and over and over again. Okay, so that's our executive summary. Let's have a look at the next part. Okay, so like I was saying, the executive summary, easy way to start. This report aims to address that blank is facing with respect to their current financial performance. That sentence there, even on the last part, you can repeat that quite often as well. Okay. So the next part that we'll be looking at is actually answering the question after the executive summary. Now, the bodies, or the answering the question, okay, these paragraphs are where we deal with the dot points that are given underneath the scenario. It is of vital importance that you look at the verb for each dot point, as it will impact how you answer each one. Over the course, I will give you instructions for how to answer each verb, but for now, let's focus on the recommend option. And I'm just going to go back to that just to make sure we all understand. Okay. See how there's a little verb at the start, describe, explain, recommend? They change. And if they change, you need to change how you answer them. Okay, so we're going to answer the recommend one in how we're meant to answer the recommend one, but we're going to go through later to talk about how we would answer these ones. Okay. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, we do it in a number of ways, okay? But for our recommended one, we should attempt to follow this structure, okay? So if we're answering a recommended dot point, this is what we do. First of all, we give the recommendation, okay? So in these 1 to 4 lines, we will be introducing our recommendation clearly using the syllabus terminology. So your recommendation should come from the syllabus, and it should use the terminology of the syllabus. Okay, you're basically saying, this is what I'm going to talk about. Okay, now because it's a recommend question, we're basically going to be talking about this is why we recommend it. Okay, which is of course the benefits of the recommendation. Now this will be the largest part of our paragraph. In this section, we must demonstrate to the reader that this recommendation will do good things for the business. Okay, basically you have to give all these little examples of this is why it'll be good. It'll be really, really good. Okay. The last part, link. In this section, 1 or 2 sentences at most, we are going back to the original dot point and making sure we have answered the question explicitly. Okay. Now, the reason I've got that little thing at the top, wait, does your answer have points from the stimulus in it? Is if you go through this entire body paragraph without ever mentioning the scenario and including information from it in your body paragraph, it's going to be really hard for you to get above a C, okay, or a sound if you're still used to the other way we mark questions, okay? If you don't have that scenario imprinted somewhere into your body and showing that you're integrating it, you're not going to get above a C, okay? So you must include the scenario. So, the other thing that I want to say just before we go over what this actually looks like, okay, is in a business report, you can draw, okay? You can use diagrams to help explain your ideas. Just make sure that you label them, just like in your science subjects, okay? So, what sort of diagrams do we normally use? Well, we normally use these 3 types, okay? So you can use a table, a brainstorm / a concept map, or a flow diagram. Now, each one has reasons why you would be using them, okay? Now, if you're using a table, you must elaborate on the table underneath the graph. You simply can't just use the table to explain everything for you. It doesn't work like that. That's not a business report. You can use the table to sum up a lot of your ideas, okay, and maybe do like a pros and a cons list, but you have to elaborate on what you've said underneath it. Now, you must list points when discussing the advantages and disadvantages of something, so that's a good reason to use a table. You cannot score without elaborating on these points, however, but it's useful for framing the points so that the marker can see exactly what you want to talk about. And it's quicker than outlining your points and very useful if you're running out of time. Now, you can see here at the bottom of this little table, I've actually labelled it and I've gone figure 1.1. And that's what you have to do in your examination. You have to go figure 1, figure 2, figure 3 as you're going through. Make sure they're in order as well. Okay, figure 3 cannot come before figure 1. Okay, so we might decide to use a brainstorm or a concept map. Now, this is useful when discussing many things rather than listing. In your brainstorm, you should be listing syllabus terms when introducing an idea. I'll give you an example of this in our sample. And when you're limited to doing a certain amount, but you know that there are more ideas related to it, a brainstorm is a very good idea. Okay, so we're actually going to be doing this when we're looking at management approaches. Now, we're only going to be talking about management approaches, but we know that there are, we're only going to be talking about one management approach, but we know that there are 3, and we want the marker to know that we know that there are 3. So we're going to do a little brainstorm near the beginning of our management approach and say these are the different management approaches you could choose from. However, we're going to choose one, and I'm going to talk to you about it. Okay. And flow diagrams. Okay, so you might have heard of flow diagram before. They basically show you a sequence of something. These are useful for showing a sequence of something or potential possibilities. I don't particularly like using flow diagrams too much. I find it a bit difficult to use in an examination scenario, but you could use them potentially. Okay, so using what we've learnt from the past 3 slides, let's have a look at how a body paragraph might look in a business report. Okay, so let's go back to our previous thing that we were looking at, our little printout. And here we go. Okay, so let's just move that back there. You can see here that I've got 3 titles here. Okay, so I've got a title for each one of the dot points that I was going to be discussing. Now, obviously, each one should have a body paragraph underneath it, but I haven't written up all three of them. I've just written up the one for the management approaches. And you can see here that the titles come straight from the syllabus terms that are relevant to the ones that we are answering. Okay, so nice, quick and simple titles. You can see they're all underlined. They know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, so at the bottom here, you'll see that we have our little legend again. And just like that structure that we're looking up in PowerPoint, recommendation, benefits, and link. Okay, so what are we going to look at first? Well, first of all, this little bit here stands outside of our normal structure. And what we're doing with this, as you might have heard me mentioning before, is we're only meant to talk about one management approach here, but we want to show the market that we know that there's more than one management approach. How are we going to do this? Well, we're going to give a very general description of what management approaches are. Okay, and this is going to show the market that we know what management approaches are and that we know the different types. So management approaches refer to the variety of ways resources can be organized and used. Management approaches will determine, apologies, I've doubled that one, will determine the structuring and operations of Tailored Frame's employee hierarchy and assist in ensuring that their resources are utilized to the best effect. Possible management approaches that the Tailored Frame may consider can be seen in figure 3. So you can see here, I've labeled figure 3, okay, 3 rather, okay, and you can see here, I've put down the different types of management approaches. No more, no less, okay? And that shows my market that I know probably what I'm talking about, okay? Now, this is where we actually follow that structure, okay? So, let's have a look-see. We're going to be looking at the recommendation part first. So, out of the 3 management approaches, it is recommended that Tailored Frame select the classical management approach. This requires them to organize a strict hierarchy within the business and assume total control of the business themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this one in light blue, okay? Because this is giving us our recommendation. And the market can very clearly say, oh yes, they have definitely given me a recommendation, and they've also given me this little sentence afterwards detailing what the classical management approach is actually talking about, what it is basically, okay? So we've given our recommendation. Now we have to talk about what are the potential benefits that the business may gain from following this recommendation. Well, like I said, this is going to be your long part of this paragraph, okay? Because basically you just want to recommend here and then smash out all the benefits of it. So by adopting a classical management approach, the owners will be able to quickly implement any necessary actions that are required to ensure the business success at this early stage. So that is our first benefit. Due to the business place on the business life cycle establishment, they will be faced by a multitude of challenges, such as low sales and high expenses that will require strong leadership. So I've said this is the benefit. This is why the business will need that benefit. This management approach brings with it autocratic control, allowing managers to deal with any sudden concerns. Remembering that autocratic control means that all of the power in the business will be concentrated in one person, meaning they can make decisions quickly when they need to. So this is another benefit. It brings autocratic control, allowing managers to deal with any sudden concerns. Another advantage of this management approach is that it allows unskilled or lowly trained employees to be directly monitored by managers with senior experience. So really what you should be trying to do with these recommend questions, for each thing that you have to recommend, I would give 2 benefits for each one. Okay? This will help ensure that employees continue to meet quality benchmarks. Okay? So these are our benefits, our thoroughly explained benefits. Now we go up to the links. Okay? So this is going to be wrapping our entire question together and making sure that we have answered that dot point. Okay? Evidently, adopting a classical management approach will provide many benefits to tailored frame and would prove appropriate to its circumstances. We're going to put that one in lime green. Okay? And so that's the link. So that goes back up to that little question that we were being asked in the first place. If you go back to the PowerPoint, which is also included in the Google Classroom, okay, you can see the question that's being asked of us. We have answered that question. Now, one of the things that we should be doing a bit more in this actual paragraph is really linking back to our scenario a bit more. Now, we have done it a bit here, and I'm going to do it just in a different color. I'll put it in red, okay? And you can see here in this red part that we've linked back to our scenario. We've basically said, because remember in our scenario, they're starting a new business. And if we remember in our business life cycle, when we're in the establishment phase, building a new business, okay, you're going to have low sales and high expenses, okay? So what I'm doing is I'm actually engaging with the scenario there, okay? And in here, I'm engaging with the scenarios again by saying that they're going to have employees that might be unskilled or lowly trained. Okay, because they're going to have a factory, but they're also going to have new employees. Now, one of the ways that we could have done this better is I could have mentioned the number of employees that they were going to have, because if you remember the scenario said that they were going to have 12 employees. Okay, and I could have interacted more strongly with the actual question, or scenario rather. Okay, but this gets the job done. Okay, so that is our example of a body paragraph. Okay, and we'll go through these more in class. This is just a general overview. Okay, now the last one that we look at, is a conclusion. Okay, so please make sure that your conclusion needs a title as well. Okay, in this section, you must make sure that you have answered all the questions and that you link back to them. In it, you should reinforce any recommendations or explanations you have made. However, you should not include any new information. Okay, if you're including new information, you've done something dreadfully wrong. Okay, no new information. You're simply re-going over what you've already talked about and linking them all back up. Okay, it's exactly like an appeal paragraph. When you get to the L, the link, you wouldn't put in a new technique, for example, if you were doing English. No, that's when you talk about the other 2 techniques that you've already done in that paragraph and wrap it all up. Okay. Now, a very common question that I get asked, okay, is do I need to use case studies for my business report? The answer is no. Okay, you do not need to use case studies for your business report. The most important thing for you to do in the HSC is to answer the question using the stimulus provided and actually engage with it. They are giving you the case study there in your stimulus. They don't need more case studies for them to interact with. They want to see how well you interact with this one. That means if they have given you a graph, then you should be referring to it and engaging with it in your answer. There's no need to bring a case study into it. Okay? So that's the end of our business report example. I would recommend that you go over that written response, okay? And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be going through our own ones and doing a little test run and see if we can understand what we've actually listened to here. So I hope you have a lovely day. I will see you again shortly, and we will keep on going with prelim business studies onto the next dot point. Have a lovely day.